All right. Well, welcome everyone. Hey, I'm Chad McDaniel, president, co-founder of Execs in the Know, and getting everybody on the call today. First of all, before we even start, I just want to say hello. I really hope everyone's doing well. Uh, Happy summer. It's been a little bit hot, depending on where we're at in the country. I think it's been hot across the entire country, right, Sid and Dennis? I think it's just hot. But anyhow, it's a great time for learning. Hopefully, we're in nice, comfortable air conditioning. Dennis, I think you're traveling today. You're in Philadelphia at a hotel, hopefully stable Wi-Fi. We always like that. But I'm going to introduce our guest here real shortly. I've got a couple of slides I want to go through before we get started. And first of all, important topic, excuse me, elevating the agent experience and really about harnessing the AI and upskilling for the future. It's been a lot of discussion around it. I'm going to lean in and make sure we kind of tackle this conversation and we learn together as a community in our community together, excuse me. So today, we're going to do some quick introductions. We've got some slides. Sid, thank you so much for putting that together because I'm a visual guy. I like to learn through that. We'll do a Q&A. And again, your questions are very important to me. So we learn together as we're going through the talk track and discussion. Can you do me a favor and just in the Q&A box, put your comments, put your questions. I'll make sure we get to that. But for our time's going to go real fast, the hour we have, but let's get the most out of it together. So please put your questions and comments as we go through it. I think a lot of you are very familiar with Execs in the Know. For those that are not, for the last 15 years, it really is a corporate CX sharing community. We call leaders learning from leaders. I also call it sort of as the playbook for the CX leaders also between our content, our research, sharing best practice, topic gathered meetings. There's a lot of ways that we're sharing best practices and insights. Dennis, you've been a longtime community member of Execs in the Know and appreciate your continued advocacy and support as we're all looking to elevate this industry. So if you're not familiar, let's go to execsknow.com. There's a lot of information. You go to our events tab, our knowledge tab, and so forth. Clearly could not be more proud and appreciative of our board. Each of these brands and leaders really represent an active voice of customer success within their organizations. Our community is about 8,000, and it's really people like these and others. And Dennis and Sid, you've been a great partner and supporter of our community too, as we get into introductions here very shortly. Hey, I'm excited. If you've never been to one of our events or you haven't been in a while, we're going to be in person in Palm Springs, September 24th to the 26th. It is really a 2.5-day amazing experience, a journey we all go through together. It's really learning. If you've never been to one of our events, we lean in, we really connect. We're all equal, we're all one. We're going through an experience together. I'd love to see you come out. We've got some great speakers, great presenters, and just a lot of just sharing and content taking place. So please do mark your calendars. If you have any questions, reach out to me, Chad at execsintheknow.com. Happy to answer your questions, but come out, join us in person. I promise you the food is good. The drink is good. Everything is good. The people are great. And there may be a pickleball tournament along the way. Hint, hint. Finally, for those, our corporate listeners today, join our private online community. I call it like a LinkedIn on steroids. We have over 1,000 members with unique profiles across the globe. You can connect, you can direct questions. We share as a community. It's kind of like the 24/7 thing. Just get involved, have an active voice. There's lots of ways to connect. Again, this is a private closed community to the corporate end users, but it's a fantastic way to connect and ask questions in an unfiltered way. All right. Thank you. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Sid. Thank you, Dennis. I know how busy everyone's time is. And when we kind of teed up this conversation today, I know we're going to lean into it a bit. And Sid, there's a lot we could talk through here, but we've got to really kind of keep to the main points, I believe. Sid, first of all, thank you to you and the entire Teleperformance family. Over the years, you have been side by side, the company and you with Execs in the Know, helping in the thought leadership, helping in the sharing. And I just can't say thank you enough. So our appreciation. Sid, your role at Teleperformance, quickly for our audience, just tell us a little bit about the role And again, I know you've got a lot of insights and expertise for the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chad. Thank you for this platform and for the opportunity to talk to our participants today. My name is Sid Mukherjee. Until about 6 months back, I was the Chief Digital Officer at TP. More recently, I've pivoted and I'm leading the digital services P&L, which we are branding as TP Infinity. So think of TP Infinity as your partner in your digital transformation journey. We are a team of about 3,000 odd practitioners all around the world. Some who are domain CX consultants, some who are data scientists, some who are technology automation developers, and some who are digital marketing practitioners. So it's really a melting pot of high-value talent that we've got in the organization to partner with our clients on their digital transformation journeys. And again, looking forward to the conversation today on how we blend AI and especially focusing on the agent experience aspect of it.
And I know there's a lot of, in our 8,000 members, there's a lot of our community members that utilize Teleperformance as the solution provider. So again, thank you for the active voice and so forth. Dennis, I'm thinking over the years, man, we're getting old together, aren't we, brother? Look at us, here we are. I don't think there's been a job that you've been to that I haven't liked. I think of some of the previous employers. Now you're at Meta, but great job and what you've got accountability for. I'm so excited for you. Can you tell a little bit for our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm really happy to be here. I think this is a very key discussion going forward. So yes, I'm Global Head of Customer Service Operations at Meta inside of Reality Labs, which is the devices arm of Meta. Under me, if you think of that self-help funnel, I'm the last stop. So anything that our self-solve or any of the digital attributes cannot handle, it comes to an agent. And so under me, there is a training arm, there's an experiments arm, obviously QA, there's a vendor management as well as an ops lead. So we look at everything on the assisted side inside of that Get Help funnel.
Absolutely. Very extremely relevant, of course, Dennis, for today's conversation. Sid, if you want to go ahead and take control of the deck there, let's go through some slides. And again, audience, I know how busy our time is. Thank you so much for your listenership. And let's lean in a bit. Audience, please put your questions, comments, thoughts, agreements, disagreements in the Q&A box as we're going through this. I'd love to hear your perspectives. Okay, let's get started. Sid?
Perfect. Thank you, Chad. And just as context setting, what we try to do a little different compared to the regular webinars folks attend is keep this a little more conversational style. So Dennis and I, we'll go through the narrative and the topics that we've got for today. But rather than attempt death by PowerPoint and go through hundreds of slides, we felt that it would be useful just to bring out the collective experiences that we are seeing at TP as a service provider to many of to more than 1,500 odd brands that we serve around the world, and also putting the spotlight on you, Dennis, at Meta and what you are doing on the CX front, especially leveraging AI. So let me start at a high level. About 18 or 19 months ago, Microsoft and OpenAI really brought ChatGPT and generative AI in front of end users, folks like ourselves. Our kids started to use ChatGPT to do their homework. A lot of interest was there, to see how ChatGPT can really help drive up human productivity, right? Obviously, most large organizations are motivated by that because large organizations have hundreds of thousands of employees around the world as well. And, whether they are small or large, most organizations started to figure out how does generative AI impact their business, their industry, their product, their service, right? Several who felt that there was a threat to cannibalization or a threat to existence. Several started piloting these technologies or incorporating these into their products if they were software product companies, for example. As service providers, we started to really start to demystify it and also see how it has an impact, especially from a customer service point of view, right? Given that we are all CX practitioners. But still, I think the jury is out in terms of what value organizations are getting out of Gen AI. And it's been 18 months. It's not a technology that just came about last week, right? We all are familiar with Gartner's hype cycle, and this is a visual way in which they show how new innovation goes through that hype curve. And then, as you can see in the last one that they put out there, generative AI is right at the top of what they call as peak of inflated expectations. And I really like the phrases that they've got, right? It goes through that peak, then it goes through the trough of disillusionment, then it goes through a slope of enlightenment, and then a plateau of productivity. So someone really creative came up with those terms. But I wanted to stop here and, ask you, Dennis, right? As a CX practitioner, do you really think that GenAI has come out of that hype mold and is starting to become real? Or do you think that there's still some way to go for the technology to evolve, for us to be able to adopt it in our organizations, and then we can scale it up? Where do you think the technology is at the moment?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I think the hype is real. I think the issue with why the jury's still out, so to speak, is because realizing those efficiencies haven't actually been realized in large part in mass. And so I think that goes back to kind of the core elements of our business, which is quartiling, understanding QA. This technology can really exponentially improve your usage of those. But these things now really stay, at least from my perspective, stay in pilots and don't go across the larger organization. But I do believe that the hype is real from what I'm seeing.
No, 100%. I don't think there is any doubt that generative AI will add significant value in the long term to organizations, big or small. I think it's just about where the technology is at the moment, especially large language models, and the fact that they're still a black box. It's difficult to make it into a deterministic, because it's probabilistic, right? Those models. And sometimes it does have its set of challenges, which we'll come to in a bit. But there's no doubt that the hype is real, and the fact that, like any hype, like any new innovation, it'll go through this hype curve. There will be some initial failures and some initial disappointment, but in the longer term, as the technology evolves, it will start to become a regular part of our lives, right? And I think every innovation goes through that same cycle, as Gartner really visualizes this. So coming to some of the pros and cons, right? And I think this is something that's very pertinent and top of mind for anyone who is looking to incorporate GenAI either into their customer-facing chatbots or into any kind of a knowledge base. The biggest risk that people still see is with respect to hallucinations. Yeah, the fact that the model can make up answers and give you a confident response, which is factually incorrect, right? And I think the most talked about example that is publicly known is that of Air Canada, where the chatbot threw an answer to the customer which wasn't factually correct, and Air Canada didn't honor the refund that they were expecting, only for the customer then to have to go to court and sue Air Canada, and the result went against Air Canada in favor of the customer, right? So I think that problem of hallucinations is well acknowledged by all the technology companies, whether it's the Microsofts or Googles or AWSs of the world, all the companies who are working on large language models, Meta included with your Llama Focus, obviously. But there's also other issues with bias in the data, with respect to data privacy, with respect to intellectual property protection. There are those sort of legal implications on the flip side. While on the positive side, obviously what people are looking forward to is the improved productivity, the higher efficiency, from a marketing and from a solutioning point of view, some creativity also in terms of how you respond to your customers. Definitely much improved personalization. And what the CFO is eventually looking for is the cost saving, right? What does it mean from a bottom line point of view? Is it real? Is the saving real? Or is it really theoretical? Because on the one side, you might argue my manual effort is reducing, but on the other side, my cloud consumption is going up. So who's really benefiting? Is it just NVIDIA and a bunch of technology companies, the hyperscalers, or does everybody benefit in the process? So I think the jury is still out there, and I think most CFOs are starting to get involved now in this decision making. But wanted to flip it back to you, Dennis. As Meta, obviously, you guys have a stake in the ground as far as generative AI is concerned, because you're one of the founding contributors in this industry and where we are headed. I think great move by making Llama open source and making it available for everyone to build a lot of innovation around it. But as a CX practitioner again at Meta, how do you start to apply these technologies for your benefit? Again, do you think that the risk versus return is really favorable in terms of making it a big scale investment?
Yeah, we're really excited about the Llama programs, and the way we sort of look at this is before we introduce any large language model into our customer ecosystem, we're going to do that in our agent ecosystem. And so we're looking for our agents to be more like editors, to let us to help correct those hallucinations. When it comes to data privacy and bias and IP protections, keeping very closed loops to what the customer has given us or where they've been on our properties. I think too, on the key returns, two very important points here is not just cost savings but revenue generation. Being able to make really informed recommendations for a customer goes a long way, and that's based on where customers been, what they have, all of those things. And then customer stickiness. For us at Meta, we want to engage, and we need to earn the right to engage. And so the use of large language models can help us entice customers to come back in a slightly different model, or to deflect where we know that a customer just wants to get information and go. So those are 2 points I would add, but keeping it inside of the agent ecosystem is the way that we look to leverage the continuous improvement that I think we'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you make some really good points there. And I think most organizations are starting to veer towards exactly what you outlined, that, given the challenges with hallucinations today, rather than expose GenAI at the moment to the end customer, it's better within the guardrails of one's own organization, because you can start to expose this to your own employees, whether it's an IT help desk or an HR help desk, or even with an agent copilot, so that you start to see what the actual accuracy of the responses is. It's a less risky environment when you are focused on using GenAI and scaling it internally within your organization. And once it's ready, then start to also extend it to customers. So I think that's the way to go. And I think from all the client conversations that I have, that's what most organizations are starting to veer to. And this is exactly where I was going with the next slide here. I was reading Forrester's report recently. I'm sure you would have seen it, and most CX practitioners would have read it as well. This came out only last month and really talks about how the quality of customer experience in the US has been declining year on year, and now it's for the third successive year. In fact, it's at the bottom, ever since Forrester started doing these surveys in 2016. It's actually the lowest score ever that we are at the moment. And this is basis nearly 100,000 consumers giving their perceptions on some 223 brands across 13 industries, right? So it's really very broad-based. And in the Forrester report, you get a sense of industry by industry as well. But for the purpose of this conversation, I wanted to keep it at that high level. The fact that customer experience is actually on a declining trend. With all this talk around AI and making AI to make customer service super efficient, super hyper personalization, et cetera, it's not really seeing the impact that you'd expect to see from it. So clearly something is wrong. And I just captured 2 or 3 key points that I read in the Forrester report. One aspect is they're talking about the fact that omnichannel experiences are suboptimal. The fact that we are exposing our end customers to a choice of many different channels, but it is not necessarily all joined up. The experience is broken. It's resulting in more customer frustration. The fact that self-service requires higher effort, and there's no way, if people want a quick response, it's a challenge, right? We're all worried about new metrics these days, right? One thinks in terms of digital containment and customer effort scores, etc., right? And while those are the right things to look at, clearly, we aren't faring well on those metrics if this is the kind of impact that customers are seeing. And I think the same is reflected on our internal employees as well. On the agent side, people are still hugely dependent on scripts, and they don't feel empowered enough to be able to resolve the customer inquiries with a lot of empathy that is required. But I think this is the way that we are going forward, right? With AI doing more and more through more and more automation of the simpler inquiries, what's left for humans are the more challenging, complex interactions, right? It's the cancellations and refunds, it's the renewals, it's the subscriptions, right? And I think that's where humans need, to empathize with other humans on the other side. And the fact that a failed chatbot experience just really makes it a suboptimal experience for the customer. So, my question here is, and I think you already gave the answer earlier, especially with GenAI, the fact that we need to focus more internally. But the overarching question here was, do we double down on our AI investments and our efforts on the customer side? Or do we initially internally focus on the employee-facing side first before we then go back to the customer side? Or do we keep on working on both and therefore have a suboptimal usage of resources, because there's only finite dollars and finite resources that we have to be able to invest in AI? Your thoughts on this, Dennis?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm going to focus in on the agent side first, right? That's where I'm going to put all of my efforts. And one thing about what you said about the suboptimal channel selections and broken channels, let's understand that the core work that we do of understanding a customer journey and resolving broken pieces in those journeys, QAing and coaching agents for empathetic at the right time interactions is still key and critical to an operation. It's things like generative AI that will exponentially help us maybe find gaps and resolve them, or build out coaching plans for agents. But the core to our operational business is still the same. And so I don't look at investment into generative AI as that's where I'm throwing everything. I'm still looking for strong quartiling understanding and quartiling everything. I'm still looking for strong QA and strong coaching. I'm still looking to understand my customers' journeys and where they break. That allows me to be more proactive potentially. So I think that with all of this, what this says to me is that we've left our core businesses languish a bit. But we should always know what our customers are going through. We should always understand those journeys, and we should be guiding those journeys, telling customers where resolution happens the fastest, the easiest, and then letting them decide. And then working with our agents to understand how they can be better, or how they can provide a better experience for customers, and utilizing that data. Also something GenAI can help with. So the core fundamentals of what we do from a customer service operations is still incredibly important and valuable. It's tools like large language models that help us exponentially grow and do these things much, much faster.
100%. And I think this is where you really, as the something that we have talked about for a very long time, is really putting the customer at the center, right? Focusing all your experience design effort by putting the customer at the center. And I think it goes beyond the customer. I think especially as we start looking internally at the agent experience also, it's the human at the center of the design, right? And whether the human is the customer or the agent, I think that's where we have to adapt our business processes like QA, workforce management. Everything has to be redesigned really in a post-AI world. And I think probably that's an area of change management that requires a lot more focus, because right now the effort's more in the the technology or the data, because those are very key and important elements as well. But the people element of that is also important, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But thank you, Dennis. I think that was really, really insightful. Digging a little deeper into the whole agent experience, I wanted to broach the topic of what kind of use cases are emerging, right? Especially with Gen AI. And while Gen AI is more recent, AI has been around for a long time, right? And I think in the CX world, we've already been exposed to different forms of AI. Like you mentioned, coaching, for example, is a great use case where you had supervisors and managers. Now, with a lot of people also working remotely, you have teams which are partially in office, partially remote. You can't really have a 100% physical presence, or that's not an ideal operating model anymore, which is why you need more of digital kind of agents and AI kind of supervisors or AI coaches to help an agent who gets stuck. And I think that's where we are also seeing Gen AI becoming more prevalent, definitely in the form of co-pilots to really steer our agents. That's something that at TP we've been working with OpenAI for the last couple of years now through the Microsoft relationship, but also with AWS, also with the other technology players. Our architecture is pretty flexible and not really relying only on one model. We also work with Meta and Llama, so we're really model agnostic in that sense. But building those co-pilots to make our humans more productive, obviously, starting with understanding the customer intent when they reach out to us over the phone, over email, via chat, whatever the case might be, really classifying, if there are multiple intents that the customer has in an email, for example. They might want a cancellation of a ticket, but they might also need it to be rebooked as per a different itinerary, etc., etc. On a live conversation, what's the pulse of the customer? Are they happy, unhappy, frustrated? And see whether the agent is actually helping change the sentiment over the course of the call or the interaction. Summarizing the intent at the end of the conversation, that's really, really useful, because in the past our agents are used to doing post-call wrap-ups or notes. Much of that can be automated today. And then also using those summaries to augment your knowledge bases. Most organizations have extremely clunky and extremely inefficient knowledge bases because of whatever legacy reasons and technologies that they use. But with AI, the front end can be really simplified, almost like a Google search experience that we have on a daily basis. Our agents can quickly search the question or the doubt that they have or the customer has, and be able to help the customer very efficiently and very quickly without putting them on hold for a long time, right? And I think that's where you start to also figure out that, hey, if my knowledge base is super efficient, my less tenured, my newer agents can be almost as proficient as my tenured agents, right? So you start to bridge that experience gap between new and tenured agents, especially by having the confidence that an agent gets through the knowledge base, right? When they are sure that, okay, they didn't touch upon hundreds and thousands of use cases during training, but once they are on the floor, once they are responding to inquiries, they have the confidence that the knowledge base is there, which gives them any input, and it's all at their fingertips, right? And then, of course, with generative AI, you have response generation, especially for emails, for chats, wherever it's a non-live conversation or a non-voice conversation. You touched upon, Dennis, QA automation. I think that's very, very relevant and a very important aspect, because traditionally in our industry, we've only QA'd a small percentage, let's say 2 to 5% of interactions. Now with the cloud-based AI models, you can consume all the entire universe of interactions, right? And the quality scoring can be automated without needing a human to kind of listen to calls, et cetera, et cetera. So really objective kind of scoring along the parameters that you need. And I think that's where definitely AI, and more specifically generative AI, has a big role to play. Guided workflows, really to prompt agents, as part of the conversation journey. That is very important as well, so that they don't digress, so that they are able to resolve the customer inquiries on the first interaction itself. You mentioned AI simulation and what we can do for a training and learning point of view. I think those have been around as well, even before generative AI, but they are becoming more powerful. I think translation, especially for global clients, we handle our clients across some 400 plus languages. So, really being able to use AI-based translation engines to be able to give a seamless experience. For example, for one of our European clients, we serve them across some 30 different languages, mostly European languages, obviously, besides English. But we translate all of those chats into English. The agent responds in English, and then through the AI, it goes back into the natural language of the customer, without them realizing that it's not a Swedish agent they're talking to, or it's not a German agent. It's actually an English-speaking agent who can do that. So I think with AI, all of those have become real possibilities. Really gamifying the work experience, making it really interesting, like a Formula One race or a football, soccer tournament like the Euro that's going on at the moment. Really making it, linking incentives of the agents to the metrics that you have through that gamified environment. So those are, really just a snapshot of some of the use cases, especially Gen AI use cases that we are working with clients on. I think wherever we've done some pilots, we've gotten some traction with a small business or with a smaller operation. I haven't necessarily seen these pilots get to an enterprise scale adoption yet. I think that's where our customers also have their own set of challenges with respect to data being in silos, or with respect to the choice of technology, etc., because they want ideally the same technology to be pervasive across all BPO partners, across their in-house centers, etc. So those are some more strategic dialogues that we are having with customers. But that's a high-level summary, Dennis. I'll flip it back to you to understand what's going on at Meta.
Yeah, these are all great agent assist use cases. And I think if, I'm new I'm interested in getting into utilizing generative AI and AI in general, it's a lot to take in. I think what we did at Meta was we looked at sort of our problem areas, and we looked to utilize AI to help us solve those problem areas. And so one of those areas would be interaction summarization. We're all looking for that first contact resolution. And for me, seeing an NPS drop after X amount of interactions says to me that, like, I need agents to understand what's happening in that second or third or fourth interaction quickly, so that the customer doesn't feel like they have to repeat themselves. So the interaction summarization it's been very valuable for us. Agents absolutely love it. They were part of the building of it, the adjudication, what is good, what is not. And then what we're quickly learning is that, like anything, and I'll go back to that core piece, your generative AI tools need some of the core practices that agents need, like QA. So QA automation is definitely one that we're playing with a bit at the moment, and very excited about it, not just from being able to ingest 100% of our contacts, but to build individual improvement plans for team leaders to deliver to agents, with case numbers and everything else that we decide we want into those coaching plans. So as you look at these and you think about the operational problems that you're trying to solve, I think the question is it through automation? Is it through AI or generative AI? Or is it through people, resources? And then you start to circle in and weight those things. And I think that's what can guide your pilots. But to your point about the pilots, you're absolutely right. You still need those core attributes of strong floor management to make sure that you realize the gains that you saw in those hyper visualized, hyper attention types of pilots. But for us, it's definitely in the interaction summarization and QA optimization. We do have some foundational work that we are going through right now on our knowledge base, but we see great promise in really proliferating our desire for the dynamic content, both for agents and customers. And we believe that will bring us back a lot of gains. But again, our foundation has to be strong, meaning the content needs to be strong and at the right level. So these are all great use cases. And if you think about your top 3 to 5 problems, I'm sure one of them, if not all of them, are somewhere embedded in here.
100%. And I think you also make an important point there, that there's always going to be a lot of different opportunities, but you still have a limited pool from an investment dollars point of view, right? So it finally comes down to prioritization and where you get the maximum bang for the money. And I think finally it boils down to one or two of these key initiatives that one should prioritize. Most of our clients, also agree with what you were saying there, Dennis. Really, it comes down to the summarization, the interaction, insights that one can get from all those customer interactions to augment the knowledge base. I think a lot of use cases are going in and improving the quality of knowledge base output that we can present to our agents. And then the other aspect of QA, which you also referred to, is super important. I think a lot of people expect that value from QA and a possible 100% automation there of a function that is not necessarily super value adding in its traditional sense, where we were just auditing calls by listening into them. If we can automate that and make the human role more around insight generation. Yeah, so what? Okay, so we heard all these things from all these millions of call or interactions that we had with our customers. What is the so what out of it, right? How can we improve our product? How can we improve our service if we are a service industry? So I think that's where the human effort should go in, more on those higher value aspects as opposed to just the transactional elements. I think that's where one has to prioritize, and I think that's where organizations will find the meaningful results as well. This brings me to the other aspect we were talking about, right, which is from an upskilling point of view, especially for our human agents. We were talking about all these different AI use cases. I think what is very clear is, as more and more of the simpler interactions get automated, humans will have to deal with the most complex scenarios, right? It's not just about giving a balance update to the customer. It's really helping them solve for that disputed transaction in their invoice, right? So how do you empathize more with the customer, right? If someone's calling for an insurance claim for a relative that's passed on, how do you emote in those kind of situations? And I think that's where humans start to make the difference, right? Because AI is great in terms of what AI does, and we can all have all the best of technology there, but the high touch element of it is very important. The human empathy part of it is very important, both in customer service or in sales, whatever the objective of the contact center is. And internally at TP, we've been debating about this while the whole world is talking about the fact that we need to become more and more proficient with all these AI tools that are emerging. We really believe that the difference eventually will be the emotional intelligence and the fact that we need to reskill all 500,000 people that we have on our side on the basics of emotional intelligence, right? How can we empathize more with customers? How do we make sure that every conversation with an end customer is a delightful conversation? And we all talk about the fact that a happy agent equates to a happy customer, right? So it starts with really eating all this AI dog food at our own, within our own, for our own purposes before we kind of pass it on to the end customer, what we've been talking about all along. So I think those are really from a upskilling point of view. And then I put in some more thoughts that I had. People talk about prompt engineering, but I think especially when you're getting into some kind of a response generation, I think that's where the prompts are useful, so that you can easily draft a response, an email response or a chat response to a customer. New generation skills, some of your best agents can become your conversation designers as we have more and more of digital interactions and chatbot interfaces or voice bot interfaces that we need to build. I think the knowledge of your best agents on the floor become your real asset to be able to do those customer journeys. And then also on the insights and conversational intelligence we were talking about just a minute ago, the fact that the QA role needs to evolve into a customer insights kind of a role, so that they really are able to see what report comes out automatically from an AI system and really translate that into actions for the broader organization. Hey, this is how we need to improve on our product, or this is how we need to mitigate or address some issues on the service offering that we have, so that it reduces our number of frustrated customer interactions. And finally, change management, right? Especially as you look to scale this across the entire operations, I think the change management aspect is something that we often undermine or underestimate what effort is needed there. I think these are some aspects that one has to be aware of or really veering towards as you upskill your current operations organization. Wanted to, again, pause here and see what you are doing already at Meta on some of these lines.
Yeah, these are all great points. And if I just sort of take a step back and look at the future of working skills from an agent perspective first, it's that sort of editor and publisher digesting information that's coming and saying, this is appropriate, this is inappropriate, this requires a little bit more of my brand voice. This is just the news and I'm getting it out. That's sort of the dream. And I think that turns the agent experience into, how do I solve this case? Or how do I find this in knowledge base, into a completely different role altogether. But your points around QA becoming more of a customer insights that leads to things like prompt engineering, or leads into things like engagement testing and all kinds of ways that continuous improvement takes hold, is definitely what's needed, I think, going forward with the future of the skills that we're going to have, or the future of the tools we're going to have. And then change management, we're going through right now a major change management overhaul, because you're correct. We are changing things daily, quickly. And it requires a high level of communication, analysis on that, who needs to be communicated to, and where you're coming from and where you're going to. So these are all really great points, but I do see agents in particular becoming more of that editor and publisher type of skill sets that will be needed.
Yeah, 100%. I know we are almost out of time here, and we wanted to have some time at the end for Chad to facilitate the Q&A. This is really the last slide that I had. This was an AI maturity model that we came up with recently. And anyone who's listening into this webinar can scan the QR code and go and answer the survey at the bottom, and you'll get a report in terms of where you stand with respect to your peers in the industry. But I really wanted to highlight and maybe talk for a couple of minutes, Daniel, on the three key pillars right at the top, right? You can't have good AI unless you have great data within the organization, right? Junk in, junk out, right? So most large organizations have the challenge, the fact that they are siloed, the fact that data resides all over the place, and it's often not clean. Firstly, how do we figure that out? How do we have a data strategy that really helps us scale AI across the enterprise? Secondly, in terms of technology choices, right? There are so many technology choices out there. Do you start building your own large language models? Do you leverage, the open source Llama, for example? Do you use GPT? Are you willing to pay dollars for large language models? Where do you place your bets, right? Or do you really need a large language model in the first place, when probably what you need is more a domain-specific small language model, right? So I think those are some things that, and also the build versus buy. How much do you do internally versus how much do you just get, from your vendor ecosystem? And finally, the topic earlier that we were touching upon is the people and the skills aspect of it, right? How do you upskill your people so that they are able to help you scale AI? How do you drive change management on the ground? I think those were some of the key points that I thought we could close this conversation with. Happy to take your insight also coming from Meta, especially with you guys being at the forefront of AI. What are you doing by yourself? Being a digital native, obviously you've got a lot of the tech side sorted, but data, I'm sure, is a challenge like it is in most other organizations. People and change management can be an aspect as well, but want to get some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, data and data privacy is definitely a challenge, and definitely fortunate with the Llama programs that we run. And I would tell anyone who will listen that the Llama engines are really great, and they're evolving daily, just like some of the others. So take a look. I think that closed model allows us to, with a lot of the agent work, it allows for not as stringent of on the privacy side of things, because we're not out in the public domain. I'm not a fan of having these different models inside of your ecosystem, going after different things. I think that we have to be targeted. So when I think about things like knowledge base, with the exception of leveraging community, maybe, we're at the forefront of our MR technology, really. So there's not a huge need for us to go digging out into the web that brings in things like put glue on your pizza for customers or for agents. So I think it's, again, looking at kind of your enterprise and understanding what values you drive as an enterprise, but the data readiness and integration is absolutely key, because you're going to have a ton of information, and it's not just the data, it's the analysis of that data. So what, to your point, Sid, earlier, like, what are you going to do with it? And then for your talent and your enterprise, we found that going out to the agents and telling them what we aspire to as part of change management. If I'm thinking of the ADKAR model, that behavior around awareness, that we aspire to make your job really easy and really fun. And here's how. Let's hear from you. Are those things that I think are going to be key to the success for any type of AI initiative that anyone runs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel, for this chat and for the conversation. It was really, really insightful. I'll hand it back to Chad now for the Q&A.
First of all, Dennis and Sid, fantastic. Congratulations. Thank you. I work with a lot of different people and speakers, and I always appreciate when I work with true professionals. So thank you so much. Hey, Sid, I really liked the, thank you for sharing the AI maturity survey there. I downloaded the QR code and really liked it. And that would be something that I would encourage our listeners to give it a shot and see what it kind of takes us through and walks us through and shows us. So I'd encourage our listeners to take advantage of that. Sid, can you go back to slide 11 real quick? And I know we have some questions out there in the Q&A box. Thank you. And I'm going to get to those. On slide 11, I want to, first of all, great job on the agent use cases. And Dennis, I know you had sort of talked about a real focus on interaction summarization and QA automation. My first question is, out of all of this list, and this is a guess, but which one's kind of the most popular or probably the most adopted, or is it's just really depends? Is there one that's kind of a leading out of all this? Or is it just depend? I'm just curious which one's kind of the leading ones that people are going towards in your experiences.
So for me, it was just looking at what problems are inside of my barn and trying to solve them. Sid, you may have a better sense of the marketplace.
Yeah. No, I can go for that. I think most of the clients that we are doing pilots with, I would say it's a tie, or maybe there's equal interest on both the knowledge base augmentation as well as the QA automation aspects. Yeah. The reason is knowledge bases, like I explained, are extremely clunky, extremely complex. Some people are still using legacy technologies, data in different formats. It's very difficult to streamline and make sense of it, right? I think with Gen AI, the possibilities of summarization, the possibilities of really gathering insight from different formats, the fact that it is multimodal, etc., really improves the quality of the search that agents can do now on the fly. I think that's really something that most organizations are looking at. And QA, like I explained, is a very traditional kind of function, but completely ripe for disruption right now with Gen AI. I saw one of the questions in the Q&A. I was taking a sneak peek while Chad was speaking, was with respect to transcribing interactions and getting insight from it. And that's exactly what it is, right? At our end, we are using largely Microsoft OpenAI services and Azure services. So both Azure Cognitive to do the voice to text, and then OpenAI from a large language model point of view. And then we've got our own sort of user interface on top of that, which we call STP Interact. But the intention is to ingest all the interactions, whether they are voice, chat, etc., and really understand what are the top contact drivers. why do customers contact us in the first place, right? Are some of these purely transactional sort of requirements or mundane requirements, not really important strategic things, right? How can we mitigate those through and eliminate those through self-service, right? How can we redesign our products, our customer journeys, etc.? And then for the more complex ones, again, how can we make sure that our agents are equipped with all the information so that they can close them on first contact without having the customer to reach back to us, right? I think that's both on the knowledge base as well the QA. I think they go somewhat hand in hand, but those are the ones I think the most important ones.
Yeah, and a couple quick.
Sid and Chad, sorry, on the why folks are contacting us. I think there's a when element as well, meaning when are they contacting us? True cost savings comes if I can become predictive, right? And I can put something in the customer's inbox before I know they're going to reach out to me. So that when element is measurable as well.
More of a, not know if it's a question.
And also how, right? What channel they are using, how do we optimize that? So,
Dennis,
sorry, go ahead, Chad.
I'm going to move on. Great stuff. I'm just trying to pack in a bunch of things here. Dennis, I hear all the time from the corporate audience of execs in the know that the marketplace and all of this tools is very confusing, a lot of noise, a lot of promises or things that are out there. And I guess, would you have any way to kind of simplify it for anyone in the market for these type of tools or things that can assist? I mean, is there a true North Star, or is there just something I'm just trying to say, is there a way to maybe approach or simplify? Because it can get very confusing, as you know.
I think for us, it was about very detailed user requirements that then led those meetings, those RFPs, if you will, right? So like I had very strong user requirements. We had a good idea of what we needed and what we wanted. And that wasn't just based from internal knowledge. That was from friends who were doing the same thing and different pools like this, geeking out, at the bar at a conference, right? Like, what are you doing? What are your requirements? So I think those user requirements or those requirements in general are the most important thing that you can put pen to paper to first. And then when you're meeting with folks, can you do this, right? It's not we're working on this in the summertime, this is coming. No. Can you do this?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And so that's what guided it for us, at least.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And Dennis, one last one, and we're going to move on off this slide here. You did a great example of sharing from an agent-facing perspective. Is there anything I didn't hear, or maybe I missed anything you guys are thinking from a client-facing of areas here, and not necessarily here, but I'm saying in general, client-facing generative AI? Is it conversational bots, or is it something else? Maybe it's already in place. Is there anything customer-facing today?
There isn't anything facing today. We do have customer-facing chatbot, but it's not powered with a generative AI backing. I think for us, we're excited to start to explore in that realm. I think we've also, being in the devices side of Meta, I think we're very excited about demystifying some of the technologies from a sales perspective. And so utilizing a large language model to help a customer make the right choices on different VR or AR technologies is something we're also very excited about, but nothing right now that's live.
Okay, perfect. And you're not alone in that journey, Dennis, so don't feel isolated, okay? I know, I'll tell you, Frank. Sid, if you could open up the Q&A, I want to make sure I get our audience some of the questions come in there and which ones we may want to tackle. So do you want to quickly look at that and see if there's Sid, you want to respond to one?
Yeah, I don't know if the Q&A is visible to everyone, but I'm just going through here. I think there were some questions with respect to the event itself. I think we addressed some of these points on CX satisfaction being at a all-time low. What impact do we believe remote agents have on the Forrester results, since engagement and retention are an issue? I think that's a fair point. I think ever since COVID, a lot of our operations have become remote. I think though that the Forrester decline really is more post-COVID. I think it's 22, 23, and now 24, the last 3 years when we've seen that decline, whereas COVID was probably more 2021. So I think we still grapple with the challenges that we did pre-COVID from an employee retention point of view and an employee engagement point of view. I think most organizations have become smart about managing remote operations or hybrid operations today. So they find ways to engage employees even if they are based remotely. So I don't think it's a direct correlation with respect to the CX decline that we are seeing. But again, Dennis, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that question.
Yes, and I think that the engagement side for agents working at home is important. So you talked about gamification. I saw a game that was much like Candy Crush, and this was an NPS shop, at certain promoter surveys that came in, these money basically was given to these agents, and it was like an addiction to this Candy Crush. Call it Candy Crush Light. It was amazing. And their work from home agents, who this was exposed to mainly, had very, very high engagement scores through their agent surveying. So I think it's around engagement, and I think AI can help, but I don't think it's going to really ultimately change the way a work from home agent engages with customers or the greater enterprise.
Okay, thank you. And
I think this also.
Go ahead.
I was saying this also maybe addresses the question that Willem was asking in terms of what AI is changing with respect to agents working from home. I think the gamification, employee engagement is definitely one where we see great results, especially for our staff that are working remotely. I think also with respect to the AI coaching that we talked about, and these technologies are starting to come together, right, in the form of an AI copilot or an AI buddy or something on your desktop, which is able to show you where you stand with respect to your peers, where you stand with respect to your SLAs and metrics, where you stand with respect to any incentives earned, especially if you're on a sales program. I think with AI, these things are getting only better, and it impacts both virtual as well as home-based agents. With home-based agents, we are also seeing AI tools that make sure that we are compliant with data security and privacy, something Dennis was talking about earlier also as something which is very, very important. So I think, definitely more and more use cases of AI helping us run operations more efficiently, even for our remote agents. Then I think there are a bunch of questions, and I'm cognizant of time, the fact that we're wrapping up in a couple of minutes. But Alberto was also asking, and then Michael as well, on the aspect of QA and the fact that we haven't necessarily made that major leap forward in terms of moving away from traditional QA to data analysts or customer insights specialists yet. Are we really at a point where we can inquire the data as if I was chatting with a GPT? I think so. I think the technology is there. I think it really needs us to combine maybe within our organizations people who are more data scientists and practitioners together with the right set of technology guys and also the customer experience domain guys, right? That's what at TP at least we learned over the last few years, is that digital transformation is not something which is a one-trick pony. It's not something which a CIO organization can do by themselves, right? You need all the right skill sets, whether they're tech skills, data skills, or process and domain skills. And only by combining that and then being able to drive change effectively will you be able to really transform QA. But I think the technology is there. We already talked about the fact that you can ingest 100% of your interactions and get good insights, quite a lot of it automatically, and then elevate the human intervention more to answer the so what's or the real specificities or the implications from a business point of view.
Well, I'm going to say...
and then there's a... Go ahead, Jack.
We're going to have to wrap based on time. I always try to keep to the commitment of time. But for the questions that were not answered, audience, I'll make sure that, Sid, I'll work with you and we can try to get those answered and pushed back to them, because I do appreciate the people's asking questions and their time for that. So I will work with you on that, Sid, to get back with those individuals. I'm going to ask that, first of all, thank you again, gentlemen. It was an absolute pleasure to work with both of you. I really felt the knowledge exchange and sharing taking place. Audience, do come to Customer Response Summit in September. There's going to be a special code to register by attending today's webinar. So I do hope you'll see us in September in person. Dennis, you know I'm going to be working hard to get you there too and get the calendar moved, because it's going to be there. And Sid, same thing for you. But on behalf of Execs in the Know, this is not a one and done. Let's continue the conversation. Let's keep things moving forward. We learn together, we grow together, and that's what makes the community so great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.